Well, hello, Internet, and welcome back for tonight's special podcast. My special guest is Twill from This Week in Linux, and of course, Twill.tv. So, tonight's topic, I think we have a rather possibly a controversial one. I've titled tonight's podcast Windows 8 Garbage or Great. So, Twill, what can we say about Windows 8? Not much. Bye. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just
Well,
kidding.
to be quite honest, my opinion is going to be significantly different from what a lot of people would expect out of me, being a person who does a lot of work with Linux.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
my opinion of it, if you're running a laptop
Uh-huh.
and you do not have a touchscreen, it's going to be really, really awkward because a touchpad, you're going to accidentally hit the corner of it and you're going to be swiping between applications without realizing it. That's
Aha.
one of the biggest complaints I've seen.
Okay.
If you're on the desktop or you're using a mouse or you're using a touchscreen, works very well, very decently. Excuse me, decently intuitive. Um, the problem is, and this is the biggest problem I have with any of it, not too obvious for most things, like keyboard shortcuts, uh, knowing that you need to move your mouse to the corner of the screen to do things, and just the general disconnect between the Windows 7 esque interface and the modern
Yeah.
UI.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Um, Let me just start off by saying a couple things. Those are very valid points, of course. Just a quick announcement for you Windows 7 folks who want to upgrade to Windows 8. Well, I believe the deadline is tomorrow to upgrade. The price is either $14.99, depending when you bought your Windows 7 machine last year, or $39.99. Uh, those are great prices for an upgrade, assuming, of course, you want to upgrade February 1st. It goes back up to, I think it's $200, so
oh,
boo on that. But yeah, go ahead.
no, I've just that was about all I had to say.
Oh, okay. Um, for my,
Well, I thought actually, sorry to interrupt there. I
yeah.
think it was kind of entertaining that they didn't want to sell a full retail version of Windows 8.
Hmm,
I've heard from multiple sources that they only wanted to sell upgrades, and apparently they've been kind of strong armed into it after the
hmm,
fact. I
yeah.
know Newegg is selling OEM copies of it now.
Well, the last I did just a quick research on numbers. When Windows 7 came out, they sold over 7 million copies of it. Windows 8, I believe it's over 5 million. So it's not quite the same. I guess the response, I guess the word is lukewarm. Of course, PC sales are down in general, I guess, nationwide or maybe even worldwide. But Windows 8 is not the people aren't wowed by it the way I think they were wowed by Windows 7. Now, I'm choosing not to upgrade. I think, Till, we can probably both agree that Windows 7 is a perfectly acceptable OS. It's easy to use, stable, assuming, of course, you keep it maintained, virus scanner, spyware scanner, shield, and all that good stuff. I run Windows 8 strictly um, inside a virtual machine just for testing purposes. Now, when I first saw it, I thought it looked cool. It's different, and I will give Microsoft credit for going in a different direction. It's how can I say this? It's the transformation from Windows 7 to 8. It's bold. It's radical. It's not for everybody.
Yeah.
But when I tested it inside a virtual box, it seemed stable, and that surprised me. I mean, and it took a little bit of getting used to. Now, the one thing I did like, and do like still, I hit the super key and I can toggle back and forth between the Metro interface look and the Windows 7 look. Of course, I had to download an aftermarket extension. I believe it's called VStart. I believe it's free or was free with the trial. And that gives me that Windows Vista Start button. Now, for the life of me, Twill, I can't figure out why Microsoft decided not to include an official start button as an option. I mean, why should someone who sees Windows 8 and is totally like lost, why would Microsoft not want to include a simple migration tool, for lack of a better term? Hey, we know Windows 8 is new, it takes getting used to. If you want to toggle back and forth, hit the super key and you have your classic friendly start button. They chose not to do that. And Twill, that somewhat baffles me. I can't figure that one out.
Well, the problem is if you include that sort of an option, like you said, people are going to use it. It's going to make it nice to sort of wean them off of it, but they're never going to wean off of it. It's like when they used to include the full classic theme, where you could go back to making it look like Windows 98.
Yeah.
People were using that. People are still using that to this day. Actually, I'm not even sure if Windows 8 supports that anymore, but
Mm,
it's one of those things, like you were saying, this is a complete paradigm shift from the traditional Windows 7 interface to the whole new modern UI, which it seems like they're trying to coerce more and more apps to go toward that,
yeah.
where you really have one full screen app, or you like drag one to one side or the other and have two, something like that. And until they get more apps into that place, they really still have to provide the full desktop. But I could see the next version of Windows, or maybe even a Service Pack release, moving in the direction of removing the traditional desktop.
Hmm. Boy, that would be a change, huh?
There
Um,
would be a lot of pissed off people.
well, let me throw this at you, and let me play both sides of the field. Let me try to defend Microsoft somewhat, and then in the end, let me try to destroy them. No, I'm just kidding. But I have to have some fun tonight. It's been a while, but so let me ask you this: what Microsoft did, it's like I said, it's bold and bold and radical. But is it any different than say what Ubuntu did, transforming from GNOME 2 to Unity, or the GNOME 2 environment to the GNOME 3 or the GNOME shell? Is it really any different than what those developers did? Now, when I first saw Unity, I thought, well, it's different, but it's not that bad. Same thing with the GNOME shell. Now, I prefer Unity over the GNOME shell, and actually, I even like the Linux Mint with the Mint menu. I just love right-clicking on the panel and adding applets and all that. There's something about it that just I know it's kind of maybe dated, the Mint menu, but I just like that. But getting back to what I was saying, is it really any different what Microsoft did than what Canonical did?
No,
You
it's
know,
it's it's very much in the same direction. The
right.
the the entire paradigm seems to be moving in the direction of a more mobile converged platform where you've got the same
Yeah,
sort of interface across your desktop, laptop, tablet, mobile phone, whatever else it is you've got, and a lot of cases TV interfaces as well.
yes,
So
right.
Ubuntu is moving this direction, obviously. Windows seems to be going that way as well with their Windows RT and their Windows Pro on the Surface that's coming soon. So,
Right.
and actually, I can see Apple doing the same sort of thing in the next couple of years with their what do they call it, Launchpad, where you have all of the apps that pop up, and it's got that actually the app drawer look that you see from Android, where you can
Mm,
swipe between
yeah.
pages of apps. So eventually, it does appear that most of the major modern systems are moving in the direction of a converged desktop, laptop, tablet, mobile, everything.
Right. Well, let me ask you this. What do you think of Ubuntu Unity?
What do I think of Unity?
Yeah,
I would definitely like more customization options,
same
but
here. Okay.
there are some things you can do to it.
Right.
But again, it's just kind of limited. I really like on that same direction GNOME Shell, where you can customize it with HTML5. You can write different plugins for it, or use different extensions to expand its capabilities without having to go way out of your way
Okay.
uh, and install extra entire apps. You just install a piece of JavaScript and HTML5
Okay.
and move on.
All right. So Unity and GNOME Shell is something that is doable, something that you could get kind of get used to, even if you are a newbie. Don't you think possibly it's the same with Windows 8?
Oh, definitely. Well, okay, my first experience with Windows 8, the final version,
Yeah.
was buying a laptop on Black Friday. I bought two laptops, one with a touchscreen, one without.
Okay.
And I'd only used the developer version before that, and only for about an hour. So I really dove in, hardcore into it. And out of the box, it was a little awkward at first, but with the touchscreen, a lot of things became more obvious than without it. Being able to swipe from the corner or the side and get certain things to happen. It was actually kind of familiar from the BlackBerry Playbook interface.
Oh, okay.
Just having those, getting to the side of the display or just off the side of the display to make certain things happen. Kind of like Ubuntu's phone interface is going to be, where you use the edges of the screen as touch sensitive areas.
Okay. So from what I've been hearing, you don't hate Windows 8. It's just
No,
somewhat
no, not at
getting
all.
used to. Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
I've actually I have two desktops here at home. I have one that runs Ubuntu that I do all of my day-to-day work and my
okay,
video editing on, and I
okay,
have a second machine that was running Windows 7 as a gaming machine and rarely got used. Just
okay,
when I was playing video games,
okay,
uh, I did a an AMD graphics driver update on it,
okay.
and it killed it. Blue
Mm,
screen of death every time I started up.
mm,
Couldn't get into safe mode. So my options, I could either blow it away and go to Ubuntu, and at that point I can't do full on Windows gaming,
right,
or use a
yeah,
copy of Windows 8 from my work's MSDN, which I'd been meaning to do anyway,
okay,
because work provides me a copy of it
cool.
to use for home development if I need to.
Uh, just a word of advice, and this is strictly from my experience to all the listeners. Never, never, never install proprietary drivers in Linux. It's a hit and miss. For me, it's been all miss, and I just don't care for it. I think these Zorg drivers, as they are, at least in my Windows 7 Ubuntu Unity dual boot machine, is perfectly acceptable. Of course, I don't do any gaming on PC. Everything is done through my Xbox. So,
Well, the actual problem that I had was with Windows itself. The
oh,
proprietary
okay,
drivers in Linux have been just fine for me.
cool, okay,
But no,
okay.
it was a bad
Hmm.
driver. The same driver update on Windows 8 has gone just fine. So I don't know if maybe something went
Hmm.
wrong. It got confused with the internal graphics. I
Oh,
honestly don't have a clue there.
okay. Well, I guess it's possible to have issues in both operating systems then, sure. Um, let's see. Well, we had talked about uh, Windows 8 mobile and on a desktop. Let me once again go with the great and go with the garbage side of things, at least from my experience. I think where Windows 8 or Microsoft scored. One of my friends, and we talked about this, one of my friends had a choice this past Christmas to upgrade a cell phone to go either with the iPhone, which is fine, or the new Windows 8 phone. And this is the Nokia. I want to get this right 'cause it's important. The Nokia 920. I think you had somewhat of a not so good experience with the HTC, but his is the Nokia 920, and he chose that one over the iPhone. I of course my reaction was, are you feeling okay? But he did the upgrade. Now the price was right. The iPhone is 200. I think he paid 80 for the Nokia phone. He says, "Well, this has everything I need and all the apps, and it's fast and zip." I said, "Let me see that." So I'm playing with it, and I have to tell you, I think they scored a big hit on this specific cell phone, the Nokia 720. It's fast, it's
920.
zippy. I'm sorry, 920. Yeah, yeah. The Nokia 920,
Is the
and
920 the one that has an external lens for the camera?
you know what? I don't know. I did.
I'll look it up real quick. Don't worry.
Okay, sure, sure. Now, the one thing I do like about the Windows 8, at least on his phone, and this may be a standard feature, if you swipe 12 from right to left, you can go from the tile screen to a scroll up and down menu list, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
And
correct.
right, and your apps are in alphabetical order. That is basically dummies proof. That is brilliant. So I will rate it a great. I will praise Microsoft as far as that specific phone, the Nokia 920.
Yeah, for everyday usability, the HTC phone that I had worked very nicely. It
Okay.
just didn't have all of the apps that I would use. I'm not a hardcore app user, but I do have a significant set that I use on a regular basis, and they had a lot of apps available, but not really the ones that
Mm.
yeah, ones that I would use.
I think the official count for the Windows App Store is 30 some thousand, which is a lot, but it isn't like Android or Apple that has half a million. But really, who needs all those apps? All you need are the apps that you need personally, just not
Mhm.
not all of them. And I'm assuming that the more common ones are in the Windows 8. I would say probably Facebook, Twitter, email client, music, video. I'm assuming it's all there.
Yeah.
No, where was it? Okay, so yeah, I will praise Microsoft as far as the mobile phone, at least the one I saw.
By the way, the Lumia 920 comes with a Carl Zeiss lens built into it.
Okay,
It's not like a zoom lens or anything, but it does have the higher quality glass that Carl
cool,
Zeiss lenses provide.
Cool. Well, it's so it sounds like what he paid for the phone was a bargain at 79.99 at least for the features.
I mean, and realistically, if not for the apps, just everyday usability, the Windows Phone is not that bad at all.
Okay.
Uh, I had some issues with notifications, and I was told afterwards that there are some ways to get audio notifications, but there's still really not a notification center, and that's the apps and the notification center were the two things that really stood out as bothered me about it.
Okay. So it sounds like maybe on the mobile side, maybe it's a work in progress, but it's not that bad. It's perfectly usable. So
Right. Yeah.
okay.
I mean, I was able to use it as a daily driver device for quite a few days. It was just there were some few little things that kind of poked away at me that
Okay.
when I'd be watching a video or listening to a podcast, I wouldn't get that notification,
Mm,
a
okay.
buzz, a sound, and apparently you have to dig down into the sounds menu
Okay.
to actually find it.
Okay. So it's something that takes getting used to, but it's something that could be, well, at least for my friend, an alternative
Yeah, a
to an
definite
Android.
workable
Okay.
solution. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, so let's see. So on the Windows 8 phone, fine, at least for the 920.
Yeah, it's really it's up to personal choice.
Yes. All right, getting to the desktop. Now I have a small widescreen monitor, flat screen monitor with HDMI, and Windows 8 looks great. The colors are vibrant, everything works. I use it in a virtual box, and it seems stable. Now, I get a lot of comments from Windows 8 users saying this thing is much faster than the Windows 7. Is that true?
On the systems that I'm using it on, I have not noticed a noticeable performance difference.
Okay.
I think there might be a slight bit of a startup difference,
Okay.
but it's kind of minimal, and it really depends on your hardware. On my desktop here at home, I've got I think it's a 7,200 RPM spinning drive,
Okay.
so it's going to be kind of slow one way or another, and it's going to
Okay.
depend on your BIOS. In my laptop, which came with Windows 8, I stuck an SSD in it, and the startup time is next to nothing.
Well,
But
yeah,
it's next to nothing in Ubuntu as well because of that.
right, right. Okay, fair enough.
So it just sort of
So, right. Okay. So as far as the desktop, from what I saw, would kind of have to agree. It takes some getting used to, but the number one thing that I like, of course, I had to personally modify it. I had to download that start menu extension and then toggle back and forth. That's where it scores. But once again, in my opinion, by not including that official app or extension, I think they're missing the boat. So I will rate the desktop experience, not a touchscreen. I'll rate it somewhere between great and garbage, if that makes any sense. But as far as touchscreen tool, you're probably right. That's what it was made for.
well, and the funny thing is though, everyone assumes that it was just designed for touchscreen, but there are a lot of keyboard shortcuts that work with it, and just hitting the Windows key and typing out what you want, you'll generally find it.
Right,
So
right.
I've been using, like you said, you've got that extra start menu you use.
Yeah,
I pin the apps that I want to the taskbar or to the desktop or on the actual modern UI screen, and I can use them there pretty easily
right.
whenever I need them. And
It's,
actually, what I
yeah,
really like about it is the multi-monitor. Windows has
okay.
always had issues with multi-monitor taskbars. You've had to have extra extensions to get, or extra apps of some sort to get that extra panel on the second bar, on the second monitor,
Okay,
and it does it by default now. It gives you the option to only display windows that are running on that monitor or not display any. You can just display app links and all sorts of stuff like that. So when I'm using an app, I can drag it from one screen to the next or use the Windows shortcuts to move it from one screen to the next.
hmm.
And it will just move which taskbar it shows up in, kind of like it used to do in GNOME 2.
So it's quite smooth then, right?
Yeah, it's very usable. Honestly, I use it at work for my development machine because we have to have Windows for our we have meetings through
Mm,
WebEx a couple of times a month or more
okay.
often than that
Yeah,
usually,
yeah, yeah.
and Windows has to be there for that. And it's like, well, all the development I do can be done. It's all Java based, so it can be done on any OS.
Right.
So I've got my Ubuntu laptop that I can use for mobility, and then my Windows desktop I can use for everyday stuff.
Before I get to my final point, it sounds like you are pleasantly surprised with Windows 8. Is that a fair statement?
Well, all of the early response that I saw out of people was, it's terrible. The modern UI is horrible. Why is this Metro thing here? And it's not
Yeah,
even Metro anymore.
right. Yeah.
And so I got this out of the box. It's going to be horrible. Let's expect it to be horrible, and we'll just
Right.
wipe it out.
Right.
And then I gave it like an hour, and I tried it out. And it's like, as much as people complain about it, it's not
Mm,
that bad. If I will say though, if I'd tried it with just a laptop with a touchpad first,
Hmm.
my opinion might be different
Okay, fair
because
enough. Yeah.
after I actually the laptop with the touchscreen on it, I took it back because it was an ultrabook that wasn't upgradable, and I'm not a fan of that. I tried out the touchpad on the laptop I kept, and it was so obnoxious that I have to use
Mm,
a mouse because I would just
wow.
accidentally hit the corner of the touchpad, or I'd hit the side and
And
swipe.
you accidentally go, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
swipe back to the modern UI or to another app or something, and it's like I kind of hate that. I think you can
Okay.
disable it.
Would you say that if somebody was upgrading or buying a Windows desktop or laptop and wanted to use an external monitor, in my opinion, you really need to fully experience it, you need a rather large or larger widescreen monitor versus the old tube type. That's how I see it. How do you see it? To fully,
My
yeah.
laptop's a 14-inch with
Okay.
a 1366 768 display, and I have had no issues.
Okay.
It's not not ultra high resolution, but it's
Okay.
also not the lowest that you could have. So
Okay. I guess I'm going strictly by aesthetics and having all the tiles fit as much as you can in that space, but maybe that's just my opinion
well,
there.
and you can also shrink the tiles down just like you can on Windows phones. So if you don't
Oh,
want those big wide tiles, you can shrink them down. You can customize the whole layout. To be quite honest, I don't even see the modern UI all that often.
huh.
Currently, I'm sitting in Chrome, and Chrome on Windows 8 has the option to run in traditional Chrome mode or in the, let's see, what they call it here. It's got a button when you click the menu that says
Mm,
Relaunch Chrome in Windows 8 mode, which does the full screen,
huh.
no tabs, no anything.
Dare I say
You
that
don't see
Windows
that.
8 is customizable like Linux?
No, it's all based on the apps.
Okay, okay.
Customizability, you're going to have to install extra things. You're going to have to now the customizability, like I was saying, with right clicking on the tiles in the actual modern UI, you can make them smaller, but you can't make them extremely small or anything.
Right, right. Well, I would still consider that user friendly, sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's something so that you can make it your own, sort of.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so we both agree somewhat that the Windows 8 experience on certain cell phones at least, and on a desktop, we will put that in the somewhat great category, or at least acceptable category.
Yeah,
All
more
right.
than usable.
Okay. Okay. Now let's go to what in my opinion, go into the somewhat garbage, but that's a poor choice of words. Let me put it this way. Not quite as great. I'll be a diplomat here, but it's really more in the garbage category. Tablets. Now let me try to explain this. Last year, when Google decided there were rumors about the Google tablet, the 7-inch tablet and low pricing and the quad core and all the features for what it does, I thought, now this is something that Apple should be concerned about. This is something that when it finally came out and it works, and I believe there are larger versions of it, this is something that Google can go to Apple and say, we have this, you don't, so yeah. Well, I mean, maybe not in those exact words like in the board meeting, but that's what it came down to. Apple had to take notice because now Google created a product that Apple had to compete with and not vice versa. Because guess what happened? Oh, they have a 7-inch tablet and it's selling how many? Wow, we have to have our own. Now, theirs isn't $200 or I think it's what 7.9 inch if I remember. I
Yeah,
can't
I
remember.
think so.
And it's 329. But Apple had to take notice because Google has taken a chunk of the tablet market. So, what it came down to is basically common sense marketing. You create a product in which your competitor has to compete with you. You never create a product in which you have to compete with your competitor. Never do that. Now, you would think Microsoft would have learned its lesson with the now defunct supposed iPod killer, Microsoft Zune. When it first, I mean, when it first came, okay, hang on, don't laugh yet, don't chuckle yet. When it first came out, I was playing with it. I'm like, well, it has a bigger screen. It seems easy to use enough. Well, you know what? Let me try this. I can just sync this with my Windows Media Player, and you can't. Well, why can't I do that? Microsoft, in their bizarre wisdom, Twill, built a Microsoft hardware type media player that did not sync with the Microsoft software media player. Now you figure that one out. Now there
Uh,
were other factors, of course. The pricing was all wrong. It didn't have any features in which Microsoft could say, "We have this, Apple, you don't." Yeah. Now, an example is like that, plug and play and go. How about a user-friendly battery? Hey, we have this iPod. You just pull this tab and you can buy a $20 battery and you're good to go. It didn't have anything to really separate itself from the Apple iPod. Of course, the Zune went away. Now, if it was priced right, and I bought one for $99, it was a refurb, that it was priced right. But to use that analogy, getting back to the tablet thing, Microsoft Surface tablets, do they start at $500 and go up? Am I correct?
The Surface RT, which is an ARM-based platform, starts at 499. Yes.
So it's 500. Okay,
Yeah.
now here, okay. Oh,
It's a 32 gig, and you actually get like 16 gigs of usable space.
okay, so you lose half of the. Okay, great. Here's the thing. Hey, let's create this toss today tool tablet. Let's price it the same as Apple's, and tool. Let's see what happens. What do you think is going to happen? What even if our name and our brand will sell and people trust us, why should they spend $500 on an experiment per se versus something that is established?
Exactly.
Now, what Microsoft should have done is, I think it was, I'm a big baseball Yankee fan, and I think it was the former owner George Steinbrenner who said, "In this business, you either lead, follow, or get the hell out of the way." Well, Microsoft chose to do neither, it seems, but they built a product, and instead of leading and saying, "Hey, you know what, Apple, we're going to build this. People trust our name. Windows 8 isn't that bad. And we're going to have a 7-inch tablet just like Google. So follow the leader, which is fine. And and you know what? We can't price it at $199. We'll lose the money, but we will start this at $249.99 and still beat Apple's you know what.
Hmm.
Now, Twill, if we had that product, we would have a chance at selling it. But no, let's price it the same as Apple. People are saying, really, 500? I'll just stick with the iPad. So as far as tab, now, I'm not saying that it doesn't look gorgeous on a tablet. I'm not saying it's not user friendly. I'm not saying it's not fast. I'm not saying people can't use it. I'm saying, as far as the tablet marketing, pricing, they got it all wrong. But wasn't the whole point of Windows 8 is to get into the tablet, world, you know, market to try and compete with Apple, right?
Yeah, and for the first venture into it, you're absolutely right. It was definitely off point in terms of
What
price.
were they thinking? I mean, you can't do
But
that.
at the same time, they're right on the mark with Apple and with Google, because Google's Nexus 10, which is the same size device, the 32 gig version is 499.
Okay,
But like you said, it's a brand new, unestablished platform, and it's
that's
their first venture into the ARM world.
right,
Their first
right.
non-Windows Phone venture into
It's
it.
an experiment. And like I said, I'm
Exactly.
not saying that it doesn't work fast. I'm not saying it's not reliable. All you Microsoft people who might listen, I'm not saying that. I love Windows 7. To me, it's the quality standard for my desktop. Okay, so please don't send a hate mail to me. Send it all to 12. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm getting plenty of it from my HTC video,
Oh,
and that's fine. I'm used to
okay,
it.
fair
Uh,
enough.
but
But
actually, the one thing that's really interesting about Microsoft's Surface approach is the unreleased one. It's the Windows Pro with the x86 processor in it.
oh,
Because then you're taking desktop software and you're running it on a mobile platform. So there's really, the entire gap has been bridged at that point.
okay,
But if they keep having hardware problems like they have with their, what is it, the touch cover that has the keyboard on it, there's
yeah,
so
yeah.
many hardware issues out of that.
Oh,
And just the pricing, they're starting it at like 899. The specs
boy.
in it, though, are amazing. It's a 1080p display with um, it's a high-end x86. I think it's a Core i5 processor, actually.
So it's fast. I
Yeah.
mean, okay.
Um, it has lots of RAM, not enough storage because Microsoft loves to eat that storage with Windows.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But
Um,
they've almost hit the nail on the head in terms of form factor and what belongs inside of it. And realistically, with the stuff that's inside of it,
yeah.
it's hard to find an Ultrabook with that sort of price.
Okay.
because an ultrabook with a 1080p display, you're generally looking at about $1,000.
Still, okay.
But
Well,
yeah, this is
but
Microsoft's.
I mean, those are certainly valid points. But when you're starting off, you really don't want to immediately appeal to a premium market. You want to appeal to the mass market so they can spread the word to the premium market. Say, hey, we got this fairly cheap, and still, this is what it does. You can trust this. Now, look, Microsoft. It's not too late. It's not too late. You can still come out with a 7-inch tablet and make it affordable. For someone like like me per se, or someone to something to try it out and play with and maybe keep it. It's not too late. Of course, I always use an expression: you never get a second chance to make a good first impression either. But honestly, Twill, I don't know how Windows 8 is going to succeed in the mass market. The phone sales are lukewarm. There just are not enough apps. Not to say that the phones aren't any good, but the apps quite really aren't there. Desktop, it's probably okay. Tablets at a starting price point of 500 or more, that's going to wipe out most of the mass market, in my opinion. I mean, how do you see it?
Uh, well, and just in terms of the desktop sphere, when you look at Microsoft's history, they have a history of taking something that's very good, or at least halfway decent, and then the next iteration will be mediocre to terrible.
Mm,
Take Windows XP to Windows Vista. XP, it was all right. It was
yeah,
very usable,
yes,
very friendly for the enterprise environments. And then you've got Vista, which sort of did a very early paradigm shift. They did a whole lot of changes to the UI, a lot of changes to the back end and the way everything worked,
yeah,
but it wasn't finalized. And that's kind of
right,
the way Windows 8 feels to me.
yes,
It's the Windows Vista of this, I guess, generation. It's bridging the gap. It's the next step, and really Windows 9, if they choose to call it that, will probably be a much better OS.
right,
It's like an on again, off again kind of thing. So
right. No,
Windows
that's,
Millennium, Windows XP, Windows Vista, Windows 7, Windows
yeah,
8.
yeah,
I don't know if Windows 8 will be as much of a fail as Vista and Millennium were, but
right,
I mean, because personally, I've used the other two, and this one feels along those same lines, but it is definitely usable.
okay,
It's not something I'm going to choose to use, on all of my machines every single day.
right.
But if I am in a pinch and I have to have Windows, I can deal with Windows 8.
So you would say I mentioned the upgrade deal that ends tomorrow. You would say it's definitely a bargain to upgrade to Windows 8 for say 39.99 if you have Windows 7, right?
The price point is definitely right where it ought to be. It falls pretty much in line with the way Apple was doing their upgrades to Lion and Mountain Lion. Um, as far as recommendation as to whether or not to do it, if you've got Windows 7, there's not a whole lot of reason to do it unless you just
Right.
want to try out the modern UI. I
Ye-
don't see any app, moving 100% to that new interface. There are
Right.
some that look that style now, but they're not forcing you to have Windows 8 to use it. So,
Right. Right.
funny thing
Yeah.
is, there's still people using Windows XP. There's still
Yeah.
some people using Windows 95 and Windows 3.1 out there, and they're very.
Um,
I know
well,
Brian did a post on running Windows 3.1 inside of DOSBox on top of Android to use Photoshop on his tablet.
hmm, that's interesting. Okay.
It's a very interesting use case there.
Yeah.
Photoshop.
Wow. As far as XP, isn't next year the final year for the official updates for XP, if I'm not mistaken? For people,
They've been saying that for so many years. However, there are a lot of more people that have migrated to Windows 7, and now that they've kind of that they've it's like they put a sunset date on Windows 7 without actually doing that.
okay.
They've just sort of they've tried to halt sales, and most vendors are not actually providing it anymore. I think you can still get it from Dell, you can still get it from HP, a couple like that,
Hmm.
but it's just getting harder and harder to find because
Yeah.
they're really slamming it in your face. Here's Windows 8.
Boy, ain't that the truth. And I'm seeing some rather slick commercials for Windows 8, and they are cool looking. But you know what? In conclusion, if you're perfectly happy with Windows 7, and I enjoy dual booting 7 and various versions of Ubuntu, I have Unity and Linux Mint, and I'm perfectly happy. Unless you just want that cool factor, then you really can't go wrong with upgrading to for 39.99. And I don't believe that download upgrade expires. You can just download it, burn it to a disk, and install it later if you want to. If
Yeah,
if I'm
it
not
should.
mistaken. Right. So that's fair. I mean,
It's not
that's
a you have to activate by this day. Once you've got the key, it's your key for
it's
good.
right, right. So you can install it later. Now, in my situation, if I was going to do it, it would be a little more tedious because I would have to. Well, I already backed up Windows 7. I have 3 or 4 restore disk. I would have to do a full install. Well, first I'd have to back up all my stuff on Windows 7, back up my stuff in Unity, do a full install, reinstall. But you know what? I guess I was lazy. Maybe that's why I didn't want to, upgrade to Windows 8. But Windows 7 is perfectly fine. And like you said, Windows 8 is maybe still a work in progress, and maybe they will get it right in Windows 9. I guess we'll see. So I guess we can both agree that Windows 8 is not as bad as people say. It is a change, in the same way, Ubuntu changed to Unity and people hated it. I guess they still do in a way. I like it. As far as Windows 8, I think I'm gonna wait. I mean, you know what? Windows 7 for me is perfectly fine. It's stable, it works. I'll just keep it the way it is. Who knows if I change my mind at the end of this year or next Christmas or whatever, but I think I will keep what I have. All right. In conclusion, I would have to say that Windows 8 is not as bad as some people at least make it appear to be. It's perfectly usable. I still choose to keep Windows 7. However, for someone who wants to have the latest and the coolest looking Windows 8, I think upgrading to it for either 14.99 or 39.99, so you really can't go wrong. So give it a try. The only, I mean, the Windows 8 on mobile and on a desktop, I would put that in the great category, or at least good. The only garbage, and of course I'm calling this, Windows 8, garbage or great, but the only somewhat not so great factor would be the marketing of it as a tablet. I think that's where they missed the boat. So, Twill, how do you see it?
I'm inclined to agree pretty much across the board there. In terms of upgrading to the latest and greatest, if what you have works for you, it works for you. Um, if you see and use Windows 8 and you like the way that it looks and feels, go for it. In terms of the tablet and mobile sphere, the tablet I can't say a whole lot about because I've not gotten my hands on one yet, but it feels very early. It's a first iteration, so it's not going to be a 100% win. And in terms of the Windows Phone, as I said in my video about it, it's very usable for day to day stuff. It's
Okay.
not 100% there with all the apps that everyone's ever going to want, but
Okay.
what really is,
Okay. Right.
what other mobile OSs other
Yeah.
than Android and iOS have all of the apps that have ever been invented?
True. And that's not entirely Microsoft's fault. It's still new, and really, they have between 30 and 40,000 apps to get you started. For most people, that probably should be enough, but that's just my pure speculation here. So, but for someone who's in the market, or for someone who's never had a smartphone, take a look at the Windows 8 phone. The price is right. It seems to work. So, yeah.
Well, and more than that, if you've never taken a look at Windows 8, give it a look. I'm not going to say that it's definitely worth $40 to buy it, but I'm also not going to say that it's not because
Right.
if I had not gotten a free copy from work, I was considering picking up a copy,
hmm
but I would have been just as happy to stay on Windows 7 for my gaming stuff.
Same
I
here.
had to
Yeah,
upgrade.
right. I mean, look, the price is certainly reasonable. You really can't argue about the price. You may not like it in terms if you ever got it and install it, don't like it, but as far as trying it out for, $40, look, it's $40 for a brand new operating system. I mean, what do you want? So,
Mhm.
it's probably worth the shot. But for me and for yourself, like you said, Windows 7 is perfectly usable. So,
And at the same time, 8's perfectly usable. It's all in your personal preference.
true. That's true. Well, Twill, I think that'll probably just about wrap it up for this evening for Windows 8, garbage or great. And yes, I thought of that title kind of like the last minute here. It's kind of catchy, so I'll just keep it. I'll send all of your mean comments to the other guy, not me. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. We're here if you need to ask, if you have any questions. Catch Twill. Twill.tv on YouTube. Twill, do you still have this Week in Linux website, or is that
I do still own the domain, and it just forwards over to twill.tv. I just don't really use it.
okay? So just stick with Twill.tv, basically, as
Hmm.
far as okay. Of course, myself, Total OS Today on YouTube or Toss Today. This has been a hopefully a special, usable podcast on our thoughts for Windows 8 if you so choose to upgrade to Windows 8. If you give it a shot, please let one of us or both of us know and let me know how your Windows 8 experience is progressing. Thank you very much to all the listeners out there, and always thank you, Tool, for joining me. People always ask, "Hey, you guys are great together. Bring him back, bring him back." Well, he's back. Nobody asked when I'm coming back. That's it. Well, wait a minute. I haven't been anywhere. Shh, I can't use that argument. Never mind. Hey, 12, thank you so much, and we'll do this again
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, great. We'll catch all of you sometime in the future. Ciao.